What is up, my friends? Myself, Chris, and Steve are back, and we're going to take you through the very latest in Liverpool's summer recruitment search. Gents, we have an awful lot to go through. And Steve, I want to start off with, well, when I did the agenda, I put in that have we left ourselves intentionally short in the centre back market? It just shows how quickly football moves, Steve, because today, two stories out there in the world: Liverpool looking for Giovanni Leoni and potentially Marc Guehi as well.
It's funny, the Guehi one seemed to have gone a bit quiet, didn't it, over the past 2 or 3 weeks. He's an easier one to speak about than Leoni, because Leoni feels like one of those ones that Liverpool fans become experts in really, really, really quickly, having never heard of him until about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. By all accounts, you guys might know more about him than me. I know very little other than what I've kind of read over the last week or two. Seems to be really, really highly sought after, and it does make sense to get both of them, doesn't it? I know a lot of the talk was one or the other, but as we said, I think last week we talked about Joe Gomez a little bit. He isn't exactly reliable when it comes to his fitness. Konate, has had some spells out as well. So for Guehi, makes a lot of sense. He's looking at it, and big year, World Cup year, he needs to be playing. But I'm sure he probably thinks, pretty good chance I'll in a season of 60 odd games, I'll get 30, 40 games. So yeah, bringing in both of them makes an awful lot of sense. And I think, you were right in the first point. Before we got this news, when you wrote the agenda, we would have been leaving ourselves a little bit short, but again, we come back to having faith in our powers that be, and if we see we're short, chances are they saw it as well.
I think that's more than fair to say, Steve. Yeah. Chris, one topic that kept coming up in our live streams when I've been doing them is the debate on Ibrahim Konate and Marc Guehi and their position perhaps in the starting 11 if Guehi came in. So I wanted to get your take on how would you compare or contrast the two of them? Because the way I've pitched it is I think Konate at his best could potentially be a little bit better, but I would say Guehi is far more consistent for my liking.
Yeah, and I think Konate, although Guehi is pretty good physically, Konate is a completely different beast physically to Marc Guehi. Marc Guehi is a lot more skillful. He's shorter. I think he's 6'1", rather than Konate's 6'4", 6'5". But yeah, I think there's a real consistency level. You wouldn't think that Marc Guehi is 6'1". He wins all of his he wins a lot of his aerial duels. He's a real calm presence, and a lot of the sort of analysis around Marc Guehi is his calm presence and his maturity ever since he came through at Chelsea, his Swansea days, but even throughout until he went to Crystal Palace, and he's become like possibly England's best centre back, if not definitely England's best centre back, across the last 2 or 3 years. And the fact that we'd be able to get him for 30 to 35 million pounds. I know he's got a year left on his contract, but that is an absolute steal. Like, we're talking a player who was 70 million pounds was rejected for this guy from Newcastle. I'm sure we'll talk about Newcastle throughout the episode, but this is a guy who's worth a lot more than what we're paying for. And if we do manage to get him in for the rumoured fee, and he plays to the best of his ability, it's the signing of the summer. And I'd say that ahead, in terms of value for money, ahead of Wirtz and of Hugo Ekitike as well.
Steve, I don't think it's fair to say, or I don't think it's misplaced to say, he was the best centre back out on the pitch at Wembley yesterday.
He's a top centre half. Like
Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. Like he's a top centre half, and he's only 25. Is he 24, 25? Feels like he's been around for a long time. I think he's only 25. Yeah, and as Chris says, 30, 35 million quid for an established England international, at a really good age. We see a few silly things in the market from time to time, don't you? And this is absolutely one of them. Like it's a silly fee, like ridiculous. Because we're talking about, this kid Leoni from Parma. We're talking about similar fees, aren't we? Similar kind of fee, maybe even a shade more. Which is absolute madness. So Crystal Palace seem to have accepted it. Steve Parish talked on after the game on a Sunday, didn't he, about the reality of their situation, not being able to let him go for free, which appears to have sort of signed and sealed it. So yeah, he'd be a really, really, really good one, I think. And interestingly, he plays often for Palace on the left of the three, doesn't he? And obviously Virgil is the left of our two. I wonder if it's more of a long-term look at his replacement rather than anything else. But yeah, I mean, we needed another body in there more than anything as well, didn't we? We just needed at least one more body. And yeah, looks like we've got it.
Chris, I mean, I might be jumping to conclusions here, but one thing the potential signing of both of these guys does do is give us a lot more breathing room for the Konate situation. Now, there was a crazy link today from, I think, one of the Spanish newspapers saying that Chelsea were about to offer 40 odd million pounds for Konate. But what's your reading and where you think Konate's situation ends up? Because hand on heart for me, mate, I haven't got a clue.
Well, I'm looking at it from a fan's point of view, and I'm looking how I would imagine I would feel in this situation. If I'm Ibrahima Konate, I'm seeing Liverpool investing all over the pitch. I'm seeing potentially what Virgil and Mo heard about last season when they signed their contract. I want to know where the club is going, and I think the club has put down a marker here. They're saying, look, we're going to be investing in the future. We're seeing the average age of our squad completely go down. It's a squad invested for the future. If I was him, I would sign the contract. But I think in terms of the two centre-back situation, I think we're covering both bases. So if he does sign, I think that's amazing. We've got another elite centre-back. If he doesn't sign, we've got a lad who's 18, 19, who's at maybe a similar level as Konate was himself when he was at Leipzig. And we've got an established England centre-back who can replace him straight away. So I think we're covered either way. But if I were him, I'd be signing that contract.
Steve, for you, do you think this maybe gives Liverpool the ability to let the Konate situation play out a little bit longer, if needs be, if you get in Marc Guehi and Giovanni Leoni, or would you still expect us to make a definitive decision on his future one way or the other this summer?
I don't think it's good practice to let your good players get to the end of their contracts, because even if they have really good intentions to stay, they're starting to get their head turned by all sorts, aren't they? We know it's not just in the last 6 months of a deal. They're going to get all sorts coming at them now. So I really don't think it's good practice, and I'm sure the club realise it's not good practice either. So when a player does get down to the last year, there's always something going on, isn't there? Like either the player's got his eye on something else, or the club's got their eye on something else. Yeah, with a lad who's the age of Konate, it's not going to be the club with an eye on something else, is it? That's just not going to happen. So you have to presume that he, at very best, he wants to keep his options open. And I don't really like that as a situation. It doesn't really sit easy with me that a player, of his age, who we've given such a good platform to, isn't completely into staying, which is the only conclusion you can get from a player, coming to the last year of his contract. There are other possibilities, I guess. If Liverpool haven't offered him the money that he wants, or the money that his team think he deserves. But yeah, I really don't know. I'm with you. I really don't know how this one pans out. Like, you don't get an impression from the way that you see him behave, or reading things from the more reliable journalists. You don't get an impression that there's anything imminent. But yeah, like I say, you do worry when a player reaches the last year of his contract, with seemingly not a lot in the offing in terms of a new one.
Do you think as well with Ibu, Liverpool, the way that they work, I think that they offer long-term contracts to players who are durable a lot of the time. Maybe I don't know whether this is just a thrown out theory, but because he has so many injury issues and has done over the last 3 to 4 years, whether they actually see giving him a bumper contract as a risk. And maybe that would then lead to them cashing in on him in that situation.
So,
But you would cash in this summer, though, wouldn't you? Rather than
yes.
Yeah.
So for me on this one, when I look at Konate, there's no doubt he's talented. There's no doubt he has many of the attributes. But I'd be a liar if I sat here and said there aren't times where I get wound up by him or feel that his mind wanders or he isn't fully focused. Cheap free kicks he gives away. I'm genuinely relaxed about that situation as long as we do get Marc Guehi and another one in. But like myself and Steve both said, I really couldn't put my finger on which way it goes. But I do fully agree with Steve. You'd have to sell this summer for me rather than let him walk out. It just sets another bad precedent.
well, if you think he's going to walk out, then you would. And if we don't sell this summer, then you have to say that the club are possibly more relaxed than maybe we as fans think. It's different for us. You know, you listen to Crystal Palace and Steve Parish talking about they can't let a player leave for free. It is different, like for Liverpool, because they are, you know, incredibly well off, and you know, losing a player that might go for 40 or 50 million quid, while not ideal, isn't going to bust the bank. Whereas for Palace, it does. So I think they'll be reasonably relaxed. But yeah, I think if the club think he's going to go this time next year, then it wouldn't surprise me, or it wouldn't have surprised me to see him go. But I think, you know, 2 weeks left of the window, 3 weeks left of the window, I would suspect that's not happening now.
So before we move on, I just want to play a little game for a second. So you're Arne Slot, lads, and you have Guehi coming in, you've got Konate and you've got Virgil. You've a game coming up, let's say, against Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League. Which two are you picking as your centre-back pairing for the season ahead as your first choice? Because I'm going to be honest with you, it's Van Dijk and Guehi for me, because I'd err on the side of what I would view consistency. So I'd go Marc Guehi and Virgil van Dijk. Chris?
I'd be Van Dijk and Konate. I've got to see more of Guehi alongside Van Dijk, but I genuinely think they will eventually be that Premier pairing. But for me, I can't stick with the boys. Got to stick with Ibu while he's still here.
I'm with Chris. I think if you were Ibrahima Konate, you'd be pretty hacked off, wouldn't you? If a new player came in and before it even had, you know, showed his worth, he was taking your place. So I think, you know, there'll be at very least there'll be some loyalty towards Konate, and you'll put it in Guehi's court where, you know, go and earn that place. You'll get a chance before too long. You'll get a game. You know, first 5 or 6 games, you would imagine, if nothing else, this gives an option to, you know, start rotating, you know, managing the minutes of Virgil van Dijk as well, which at his age, you know, he's an incredibly fit fella, but you do want to start managing the minutes of a, you know, player 34, is he 34?
Yeah.
You don't want to start managing those minutes. So at very least 4, 5, 6 games in, you're going to get an opportunity, and then you put it in his court and you say, well, you know, make it so I can't leave you out. And
what a collection, though, for the manager to have to work with if that
brilliant.
is the case.
Because
I mean,
Joe Gomez,
wow.
don't forget Joe Gomez. If he is actually fit, then he's a viable option as well. You know, I'm a big Joe Gomez fan, and
yeah, he's very important when he's fit because, again, versatility right across the back line with Joe, and even number 6 if needs be at a push. So, look, before we move on, gents, just a quick word on Crystal Palace, Steve. They obviously lost the repeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which will see them play in the Europa Conference League next season. I got to be honest, mate, for me, this feels like a different outcome would have happened if it was a bigger club.
This is interesting. I was listening to a couple of podcasts on this, and I think I didn't totally understand exactly what had happened. There was a deadline apparently in March, wasn't there, that they missed to kind of register or clarify the situation around the ownership and who has actual influence and who has actual control. And, you know, back in March, is anybody really thinking, well, we're going to win the FA Cup and we're going to, you know, have this as a live problem? Probably not. So they've fallen foul of what is in effect a technicality, but an upholding of, you know, the hard and fast rule, I guess, which does feel harsh. Given I heard a Crystal Palace fan on the radio the other day talking about Lyon, you know, and Palace, and how Palace have got into the Europa League on actual sporting merit, whereas Lyon are kind of like best losers or something, aren't they? They didn't actually win. You know, whether a cup it was. it's really, really unfortunate. I wonder how much. I don't know how much the Europa League is a pull. For guys like Eze and Guehi. I wonder if that kind of was a final nail in the coffin. He's like, well, if we're not in that tournament, I don't fancy it anymore. Or, but yeah, it feels like they've been harshly done to, doesn't it? And I think on their performances, last season, I think they're a great side to watch. And Glasner's done a fantastic job on not brought in that many players. When they sold Elise, they brought in Sarr, and that was brilliant. And he's not, again, barely signed anybody this summer. And we saw on Sunday what a good team they are. So they'll bloody a few noses this year, won't they? And they'll be looking for a top 10. And I feel like they're pretty hard done by.
Chris, you got to feel for the fans as well. Whatever about the ownership, whatever about the structure, the fans and the players, they did their part. Crystal Palace fans are brilliant, and that team won the FA Cup by right. So I really do feel bad for the fans.
Well, and the whole process was just tiring, wasn't it? Like the technicality was they didn't answer an email. Basically, that was the whole reason why they're not in the competition that they should rightfully be in. I find it very, very strange. I don't understand what the benefit is to the organisation. I understand that the rules have to be upheld and people have to be made examples of, but I don't think if that was United or Liverpool, I don't think that happens. I don't know if that's like some sort of wild conspiracy, but
it just is a conspiracy, Chris, because we've seen bigger clubs kind of get a bit of grace with similar situations before. I mean, does anybody really believe that two Red Bull clubs aren't really still owned and operated by Red Bull?
Yeah. Wasn't there a similar situation when we won the Champions League in 2005? Or
Everton were supposed to be in, and we were supposed to be able to defend it in 2006. So they changed the rules so that the Champions League winners now have the right to defend their trophy.
Yeah, so that's an example. Liverpool are a global brand, and Crystal Palace aren't, and that had that situation. I feel really shit for the fans, to be honest. I think it's really harsh. Obviously, they're still in Europe, which is an incredible achievement from Crystal Palace, but it's not the one that they should be in. It's not the standard they should be fighting at. It's not the prize money they should be earning. Talking of money that they need, I really hope they go and win it.
I heard a Palace fan saying actually they've probably got more chance of having a proper go at the Conference League rather than the Europa League. They can have a real go at it. West Ham won it a couple of years ago, didn't they? And it's a fantastic night for them. I think this whole thing just shines another light, as if we needed another light shining on it. This whole idea of multi-club ownership, I just think it's all nonsense. Like how just have a club owned by someone or something. We're seeing it with Darwin going to Al Hilal, and then is that money going to come back around into Newcastle via it's just so murky, all this idea of multi-club ownership, and it just muddies the competitive waters and muddies the notion of integrity around around ownership and intention and where money goes and where money comes from, and I just hate it.
Do you know what though? I actually don't blame the owners of the clubs at all. It should have never been an option.
Yeah, and why would you not have a group that you can move players around and you use it to benefit? City do it with Girona, don't they? And use them to benefit them loads. I just hate it.
United do it with Everton.
Yeah.
All the time.
And Sunderland. Don't forget Wes Brown.
Exactly. I wanted to move on. Actually, Steve, you brought up Darwin Núñez. Obviously, that move has happened now. He is officially an Al Hilal player, and it was a lovely goodbye from Darwin, the statement that he put out. But it kind of got me thinking about the forward selection, and we played on Sunday, and the game wasn't going our way with 10 to go. And what really stood out to me was that he wasn't willing to turn to young Rio. So it got me thinking. We've been told the pathway isn't going to be blocked, and rightly so, because my goodness, what a talent young Rio is. But if the manager doesn't feel when the chips are down that he could turn to the bench for Rio in the same way that he probably would have if it was Diaz on the bench, that makes me question the sensibility of this whole summer window with regards to the forward recruitment or lack of so far.
It's interesting, isn't it? I wasn't surprised that he didn't chuck him on, because I said last week, that I think he'll get minutes in the Premier League, but is he a realistic, competitive option in terms of competing for that position? I don't think he is. It was actually really interesting on Sunday when Ekitike went off, and then no forward came on, and then you look at that last 10-15 minutes and you're thinking, where's the goal coming from, who's coming off the bench? It was actually like I was like, oh, hang on, are we actually short here? And I'd never really stopped and thought, because we're in such a mindset of, well, hasn't it been a great window for us? Haven't we done great business? And all of a sudden you're like, we're actually quite short here. And it sort of turns the mind around. And if the Isak thing is still such a mess, isn't it? And I'm sure we'll get onto it in a minute. But if Newcastle really do dig their heels in for the next 2 weeks, and then it comes to the last few days and we're scrabbling around for another body, another forward, which we absolutely need, don't we? Where does that leave us? If the window ended tomorrow, has it been a good window? I probably would err on the side of no, just because, Darwin, the last 10 minutes, I'd have loved to have had Darwin to bring on, 10 or 15 minutes to go. Go on and cause some chaos, go and work down the channels, go and do your thing. And we didn't have that player to come on. So, yeah, it is an interesting one. And that, when he could, as I said, when Ekitike went off, who I thought did really, really, really well, by the way, when he went off, it did just expose us a little bit, I think.
For me, Chris, I was looking at it and I was thinking, right, well, we've lost Diogo tragically. We sold Darren, we've sold Diaz. Chiesa is kind of persona non grata in the squad. So 4 out, really, if we're talking about Chiesa not being utilised again. 1 in and a youngster promoted. So, like Steve, I was kind of scratching my head going, the math don't math here.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it, to be honest. I'm comfortable with the fact that I think that they know what man they want, and we've seen it before. If they have to wait 6 months, they'll wait 6 months. I know we don't want to wait 6 months, but if we have to, we will. That guy, Alexander Isak, is the target. He's the one, and I think it will happen. I do agree, though, that frustratingly the options, the one man who we might have wanted to throw on is Darwin. I'm not saying we definitely wanted to keep him, because actually I was an advocate of him leaving. But if you want carnage in the last 15 minutes, that's the guy you want to throw on. I'm so content with the fact that we'll get Isak. Like, I'm genuinely like, I'd almost, you couldn't tell me that we're not going to in the next 2 weeks. But yeah, I understand the frustration, but I just wouldn't worry too much about it.
I was more concerned about the Rio's place in the squad. Is he a fully fledged first teamer who is going to be an option? Because I was thinking, if Gakpo was on that pitch and Diaz was on the bench, I think we'd all agree we probably have seen Luis Diaz on Sunday for the last 10 or 15. And for whatever reason, Steve Arna didn't feel he could turn to Rio for the same.
Yeah, I mean, are we, even if we sign Isak, are we still one short? Are we saying that because, or is Wirtz an option to play off the left as well? I think he probably is, isn't he?
For me, if we signed Isak, Steve, my front three in my mind right now would be Salah, Isak when he's fit, and Ekitike probably pushing to the left.
I think it's interesting, wasn't it? Like we could be talking about formation change. We talked about this last week, didn't we? Formation changes. They're all so versatile. Other than probably Isak, who's a straight up number 9. The rest of them are all, so versatile in where they can play. So he's actually got loads of options in terms of formations. Some funky 4-2-2-2, 2-2-2s. Some 4-4-2s, some 4-2-4, some 4-2-3-1s. Yeah, but as we said last week, it'd be really interesting to see how. I'm sure they're all working to a plan. What is the plan? How is it all going to shape down? Because there were bits and bobs on Sunday that I really liked. There were bits and bobs on Sunday that I really didn't either. So yeah, be interesting.
The link-up play, Chris, between Wirtz and Ekitike, what you could see that they were training together and working on that over pre-season, because it was really catching my eye in those first 20 minutes in particular.
I was just like, you wait until these guys know each other. Like they're already linking up incredibly well. I think it's just a matter of time. Obviously, we've got all of these incredible players in, but we have to remember that they've only been together for a month and a half, and that's making no excuses for them. But it's a real big turnaround of players, and it will take time. But like as you say, Wirtz, especially in that first 20-25 minutes, that's like, yeah, that's a Ballon d'Or winner right there. And then you see Ekitike, he actually did float out so much to that left hand side, and Wirtz and him linked up really well. I think that's sort of how the goal came about, the first goal. The one thing I've said all summer is Liverpool are signing technically excellent footballers. There is not one footballer in that entire squad who is not technically sound. It's going to be sexy football season next season, man.
Steve, I was thinking of you yesterday because I was looking at the report from Chris Bascom that said that basically Ekitike stylistically and in the data is like a brother of Isak, almost like another Alexander Isak, and kind of got me thinking about, do we have a plan B if we don't get Isak in? But just seeing that from Chris Bascom, that Liverpool viewed Ekitike as the closest thing to Isak, kind of made me smile a little bit.
Yeah, but is that also saying they probably can't play together if they're too similar? I don't know enough about. I'll be honest. I don't know enough about Ekitike. I know he can play down the middle, but we probably haven't seen that much of him. You're right.
Did you get a touch of the Bobby Firmino's off him at all? Because I did.
No, not really. Not really.
The flicks, the link up, the intelligence, all.
Not really.
It's a lot more of a physical. He's quite skinny, but he's a lot
running behind a lot more, won't he? Than
pacey.
Firmino, yeah.
Very intelligent finish as well for the goal.
Yeah. I mean, he's a baby. He's a baby too, isn't he? Like, we're buying players with such a lot of potential. I'm with you on Wirtz. I really enjoy Wirtz. I was a big, I used to worship the ground Thiago walked on, and I think he's cut from similar cloth, isn't he? Like he, just really neat and tidy in everything he does, and a lot of the time, he isn't doing really, outlandish, flashy stuff. Everything's neat and tight. There was a turn one in the first half, and everyone's just jaws hit the floor, and then he's flicking it around the corner, and he's drifting here and there. What I think, sorry to be the doom gloom merchant. What I did think it did though, because the formation last year, Szoboszlai was like a number 10, but he wasn't really. He sort of covers the whole pitch, doesn't he? And I thought having a sort of dedicated number 10 exposed the midfield quite badly. And we didn't have any real defensive-minded midfielder in there. And I thought it was just way too easy to get our back four. Like way too easy. They were so exposed so often. And I think that was kind of the big thing. And obviously Gravenberch is missing the first couple of games, isn't he, the new season? So, well, the second one being at Newcastle brilliantly. So
I think it's only one.
I think it's two, isn't it? Is it only one? I thought it was two.
I believe because it wasn't what you might call it, a recklessly dangerous challenge or anything. I believe it's one game ban.
Okay, well, maybe it's only one then, and that'd be fine.
But I agree with what you said.
We'll miss him.
Ryan Gravenberch in that midfield probably would have plugged some of those gaps.
Yeah. It's an interesting conundrum to solve if you do bring in this guy. I'm not saying Wirtz is work shy, because his numbers of winning the ball back and stuff, and his energy and his sprints and his pressing, his numbers are really good, aren't they? But it slightly alters a formation if you've got a dedicated number 10 that stays quite high.
So, gents, if I was to give you 50 quid right now and say yes or no, put this on whether we sign Alexander Isak before September the 1st, Chris, what says you? And also I'll follow up and say, if we don't, what on earth is the backup plan?
I'd double it. I think we're definitely signing him. And if we don't, we'll wait for him. He is the guy. He is the Van Dijk situation. Like that's it. I don't think there will be a backup plan. I don't think we'll go and get a plan B. He will be it.
Steve?
I know I'm lumping it all on. Like I think he will. I think, you know, in the Times today, his rental's gone back on the market, hasn't it? Like he's moved out. I just think at some stage, common sense at Newcastle will override ego. Like, I just think like it's absolutely no good for them to have a bad egg. Effectively, you're not saying he's a bad egg, but a bad egg for their, you know, for their environment. You know, stinking out the place, not playing when they could have 130 million quid for him, and you know, get rid and use that to strengthen. And I just think ego is over. But you don't. They like I don't be too critical. They sort of think that they are acting like a big club by, you know, by standing up to the bully. I think if you look at the actions of actual big clubs, when a player says, I don't want to play for you anymore, the big clubs go, all right, fine, off you go. You know, we'll see you later. We'll use that money and we'll get better off it. You know, City don't stand in the way of anybody leaving. Liverpool don't generally. They get the best amount of money they can for him. United sold Ronaldo. You know, the really big clubs understand that, you know, they're quite good at recruitment, United aside. They're quite good at recruitment. So they know that player goes, we'll just go to the next one on the list because everyone else wants to come here. The slight challenge with Newcastle is they're bad at recruitment, aren't they? Which kind of messes it up a little bit. But I think they're not acting like a big club. They're acting like a little club with a big ego. And I'm sure that'll probably piss some people off, but I think that's how it is.
But you're also not showing a great example to attract the Sescos of this world, are you? I mean, we've spoken about Dortmund before, and Dortmund know their role in European football. They get some of these great talents, they develop them for a few years, and then they make a few quid when they sell them on. If you're the likes of Sesco looking at this, Chris, and you see Isak, who came from Sociedad, really developed well at Newcastle, blossomed under Eddie Howe as well, and then you see how vitriolic all of this has gotten with his potential exit. Even when you're talking about a British transfer record fee, it's not like we're lowballing them. It does probably paint a picture of, do I need this headache in the future?
Well, you're absolutely spot on. Everyone's rejected them, haven't they, this summer? Like, there's not been any players who've sort of chosen them above all else. There was the excitement around the project initially when they got Bruno and Trippier. They brought in their sort of domestic talent, which has actually served them well. Like, let's not forget here, Newcastle have drastically improved as a club, like over the last 4 years.
Yeah, fantastic.
The Champions League twice. Like, Eddie Howe's done a brilliant job, but like, they have to understand, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, I have to say, but the food chain exists. Liverpool are part of that food chain. Yes, we're at the top at the moment, but we still even sometimes have to feed to Real Madrid. Like, they are still number one in the food chain. And yeah, disturbing the natural order can sometimes upset your own players. And I think that's what they have done with Isak. And I think, as I said last week, although it may be a bit dark and a bit dirty, Liverpool have played them like a fiddle. Like, we've put the opening bid in, they've rejected. Oh yeah, no, we'll be all right. That's upset Isak. Isak is now frustrated. He said he's never going to play for Newcastle again. That's going to lower their asking price. Everybody wins if you're Michael Edwards. It's so easy.
I think you might appreciate this one, Steve. I was reading the media earlier on, and it felt like every journalist that wrote about the Marc Guehi situation was at pains to say about the great relationship between Steve Parish and Liverpool and the respect that Liverpool were shown to Crystal Palace by going directly to Steve Parish. That kind of did make me chuckle.
Well, I think, you know, as Chris says, though, Crystal Palace understand where they are in the pecking order. And I think I wonder what it is they're doing wrong at Newcastle, because I would imagine as a player it's a pretty attractive proposition. You know, it's a fun city. I know it's right up in the north, but it's a fun city. You know, it's
Great
a good
fan
stadium.
base, really vocal, loyal
Yeah,
support.
the fan base is fantastic. The team's on the up. The midfield's as good as any midfield in the Premier League. For a centre forward, I know they've lost out on a few. I can only imagine there's a money thing. João Pedro, and Liam Delap, guys like that choosing, a bit more money, at Chelsea. But I would think it's a pretty attractive proposition. So I wonder what it is that's actually going wrong. Where the sticking block is. If it's a personnel thing, if they've got the wrong person doing the deals, if they've got a silly wage structure they're not willing to break. If I don't know what it is, but it's obviously something because
Have you seen
on the face of it,
Mel
you think
Reddy wrote something and basically kind of intimated towards the fact that the human touch isn't there behind the scenes since Amanda Staveley departed at Newcastle. There's nobody there to kind of put an arm around these players and explain to them, talk them through the process and what's happening. It's just kind of Eddie Howe and nobody.
Jason Tyndall.
Oh
Yeah.
Eddie Howe's another good thing, though, isn't he? I think
brilliant.
he's a really impressive fella. Really impressive.
I think he's even dealt with this well and how he's spoken.
Yeah.
I think he's been really sincere.
If you're a young player, you'd fancy playing for Eddie Howe. I think he's a young attacking manager. I think, like I say, the pieces are all there. They just need a few. Few people. This is the thing. Like if they were good at recruitment, they'd be confident in taking 130 million and they'd be confident in using it well, wouldn't they? They'd have a list already, like I'm sure our guys have. They got a list already, and if one goes, they go to the next one. They're, I guess, if they've got a list, they're probably 10 or 15 down it by now, aren't they? But they just, I don't know if they work in the same way that we do, and go and borrow Brighton's little black book. They'll have someone lined up. They'll have the under-16 captain of Ecuador or something lined up to.
Oh yeah, get Tony Bloom in the boot, throw him in the boot of the car,
Exactly.
and drive off.
Just start to be a bit better at recruitment because other teams manage it and they don't seem to be managing it.
So, Chris, we're kicking off on Friday. New Premier League season. Have you seen enough in pre-season and what we've seen so far to make you feel like we're ready for this game on Friday? Because the one concern that I've had is I haven't seen enough strong Liverpool 11s together in pre-season. Like we've spoken about some of the changes and the fact that these guys are still getting used to each other. We've talked about the relationship between Ekitike and Wirtz, which looks really promising. I just have some concerns that we might be a week or two away yet.
Yeah, are we oven ready to win the Premier League? I'd argue maybe not. Will we be come October, November? Probably, yeah. And I still think we're good enough to have a really, really strong start to the season. We've got so many unbelievable players. Still a core of a team that won the Premier League last year. I think if it was potentially we're going to Man City on the opening day or we're going to the Emirates or whatever, you'd be slightly more concerned. Home at Anfield, I think it'll be absolutely buzzing. They'll obviously have the tribute to Diogo. We can't underestimate how much that's playing on some of their minds as well. It's still a grief a process, but yeah, I think they are, as a footballing entity, that if it all gels together, I don't think many or anyone can stop us this season. I really don't.
And for yourself, Steve?
I'm an eternal. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I'm an eternal pessimist. I just the start's going to be everything. We've got some big games, at the start. Bournemouth, obviously Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, and then I think United aren't too far away either. Everton aren't too far away either. So got some really, really, really big games to kick things off, and it's all about the start, isn't it? The Premier League. I know it's 38 games, but if you get off to the good start, first 5 or 10 games, you put yourself in such a good position. Then it's hard to claw the ground back. So I am confident. I think Alexis McAllister aside, we'll probably see a pretty similar team to what we saw on Sunday. I'd be tempted to start Andy Robertson on Friday night.
Let's do it. Give us your 11 then, Steve.
Well, are we saying the 11 that we think or we would like? Because I think it'd be the same.
Give us your 11 if you're Arna.
Well, so what I think it'll be is the 11 that played on the weekend, except for McAllister in for Curtis Jones, I think. But I would. I think Kirkes got caught out just a little bit too high, a little bit too often. And I think if we haven't got that defensive cover, I'd just like to see one more defender in there with a bit more defensive nous about him. So I'd probably bring in Robertson for Kirkes, but otherwise you were near enough as you were.
So for you then, it's Alisson, Frimpong, Robertson, Van Dijk, Konate, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Wirtz, Salah, Ekitike, Gakpo.
Yeah.
And Chris?
I think that's pretty much spot on. I'd stick with Kirkes, to be honest, but obviously they've got some top players at Bournemouth that can punish you. Semenyo on the left hand side, especially, I think he's a great cracking player. And if we were looking for any backup left wingers, then maybe he should be on the list. But yeah, I think it will be as you were. I think there may be a few tactical tweaks. We know what Slot's like. I don't think many 2 games are the same with him. There will be a few tweaks. He'll have seen what happened in the second half on Sunday, and I think it will be addressed. So yeah, I agree. I think McAllister in for Jones, and maybe Robertson, but I'm going to stick with Kirkes.
And finally, gents, before we finish up, is there anything
what do you think, Craig? Sorry, what do you think?
I'm kind of with you. Yeah, I think I can understand your thought process on Andy Robertson. I would probably urge the same. Yeah, I would probably lean into Andy Robertson there, with especially Frimpong on the right being so advanced. I agree fully with what you said. I think what Steve said, probably the team we're going to see. But I wanted to ask before we finished up, have you guys seen anything, or do you hold any concerns about Arna now? We had last season where we weren't sure if he didn't want to over tweak Jurgen's squad and system and the way that we played too much in one year. Now that he's got some of his own type of players in, is there anything that you have concerns about with the way he sets us up?
No. Do you know what? Do you know what last year told us? That he's a proper coach, didn't it? Like, it told us that he's a proper man manager, because he came into a situation where, it would have been very, very, very easy to just sort of say to the lads, right, go and do the same thing again. But actually, no, he brought his own style in. He's a proper coach, and I think those, he's sort of earned his stripes in terms of players, buying into what he does and what he brings. And yeah, I don't have any doubts whatsoever. That's not saying we're definitely going to win the Premier League again, because there's loads of other really good teams, and a lot of these games, a lot of these moments, they hang on tiny little things, and does it go our way? Does it not go away?
Of course it does, Steve.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Come on, mate.
Of course it's going to. But no doubts whatsoever. Look, he shares my haircut. I have to back. I have to back a fella with such a stylish Barnett.
I love the way we're now calling this a haircut for us all, Steve. Well played. It's a choice, definitely. It's a choice. It's a statement.
It's less of a choice now than it was, I think. But
as a creature with far too much hair, Chris, do you have any concerns about Arna going into this one?
Creature, yeah. I think no. The one thing that really impresses me with him is that actually he's not stubborn, and I think that's a really, really important. I think stubbornness is like one of the worst possible things a football manager can be. You see it with so many coaches that they were like, we have to stick to our principle. We have to play like this. We have to do this. He doesn't do that. He adapts to the certain situation. And I think that's where he prevailed last season. I think that's where football management as a whole is going, because you're seeing styles being unpicked.
I had Russell Martin in my head when you were like,
I'm thinking of Amarim. I'm thinking of Amarim at United, completely wedded to a style, even though the players just don't fit it or buy into it.
Exactly that. So I've got no concerns, and I think he will find the style that fits us. I understand why fans may have concerns after watching that on Sunday, but it's literally the dinner plate cup. Like, we're all right. Like, it's going to be fine.
See the stat of one team in the last 15 years have won the Community Shield and then won the Premier League. That's a wild stat.
What very quickly won me around about Arna last season was the halftime tweaks. He got so much right for the second half when he didn't, maybe underestimated or guessed wrong about which way the teams were going to set up against us. Those changes at halftime last season, I thought, were phenomenal.
Like in the first game of the season when he hooked Konsa and put Konate back on, and you know,
Yeah,
on the game.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolute
So-
master at the in-game tweak.
Last thing before we finish up, give me a score prediction, Chris, for the game against Bournemouth on Friday. Which is weird, by the way, saying that Friday, and then we have a full 9-10 days to prepare for Newcastle, which will be tasty.
I'm gonna go 3-0. And 4-1. 4-1.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, clean sheet. Come on, now.
Yeah. I'm gonna go 4-1, and I'm gonna go Mohamed Salah double. Especially if he's not on penalties. Can we just clear no more penalties for Mo Salah,
He
please?
definitely wanted to score the penalty he missed the week before, the exact same spot. He was trying to prove something to himself.
Please, no more Mo penalties. Anyone, just get someone on it, please. Who Soboslai scored his, didn't he? Let him have it.
Well, McAllister be the next one, but he missed as well.
Yeah, get Soboslai on it. Scores
Yeah.
a free kick for Hungary every week, doesn't he? Yeah, 4-1.
Steve?
I'm going to go for a slightly nervy 2-1.
I can understand both shouts. As long as we get a win, I don't mind. I'm probably going to split the difference and go
I'm running
3-1.
with 3 points and we're golden, aren't we?
So I'm going to split the difference and go 3-1. But look, it's been fun, gents. We will catch up, of course, next week after the Reds are back in action on Friday. And, of course, maybe we have a transfer or two sorted out by then as well. Thank you so much to Chris and to Steve and to you guys, of course, for watching. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.